I'm Ian Hartitz here, my top 10 wide receiver plays of Week 13. Number 10, I got Calvin Ridley. Look, Mohamed Sanu's gone. Ridley is now the number 2 guy in Atlanta. He has 7 career games with at least 8 targets. He has at least 5 receptions, 70 yards, and a touchdown in every single one of those games. Even if Marshawn Lattimore is active, expect him to be dealing with Julio Jones. Number 9, I got DJ Moore. Since the Panthers' Week 7 bye, Moore has been the wide receiver 51, 17, 9, 15, and most recently wide receiver 3. He has at least 9 targets in every single one of those games and is playing football at a very high level right now. Number 8, I have DJ Chark. Week 12 was a letdown, but look, this is still your PPR wide receiver 5 on the season. Amazing get-right spot versus the Buccaneers, who have allowed the most PPR points per game to opposing wide receivers this season. Number 7, I got Odell Beckham Jr. I realize Jarvis Landry has outproduced him recently, but I think last week was just the start of what's going to be a big couple games for OBJ. Not expecting Joe Hayden to travel with him. Keep trusting one of the best and most talented wide receivers in the game. Number 6, Chris Godwin. We saw a big-time bounce-back performance last week. He's a PPR wide receiver 2 on the season. Matchups don't matter. Fire this guy up. With that said, he now gets the Jaguars' defense that has allowed a combined 75 points since their Week 10 bye and cannot slow down anybody. Number 5, I have Devontae Adams. Since returning from injury in Week 9, he has 11, 10, and 12 targets. There is not anyone resembling a number 2 receiver in the Green Bay right now. Devontae is the passing game. Keep treating him as a high-end wide receiver 1. Number 4, I have Julio Jones. He's banged up with the shoulder. Maybe Marshawn Lattimore will be back and there to shadow him. I don't care. This is Julio Jones we were talking about. Career-long, 8 straight regular season games without a touchdown. Do not be the person that has Julio Jones on your bench when the inevitable eruption comes. Number 3, I have Mike Evans. He has a full 300 more air yards than Julio Jones this season, who's number 2 in the league. Look, I realize it's annoying sometimes when Evans or Godwin goes off and not the other guy, but these are both top 5 wide receivers. Keep treating them both as top 5 options. Number 2, Tyreek Hill. He had 19 targets in Week 10. Anytime anyone is getting that many targets from Patrick Mahomes, you treat them as one of the top overall players in the league, regardless of position. It just so happens that Tyreek Hill, maybe he's not the best pure wide receiver in the league, but in terms of causing impact on the defense, he could be the most impactful wide receiver in the game. Just make sure you keep an eye on that hamstring injury. Number 1, none other than Michael Thomas, the overall PPR wide receiver 1 this season, averaging 112.9 yards per game. Only Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, Josh Gordon, and Calvin Johnson have managed to beat that mark over the last 20 years. You can't guard Mike. I can't guard Mike. No one can guard Mike.
Hey friends, this is John Daigle, and these are my top 10 wide receivers for Week 13 of the fantasy season. Number 10, Leonard Fournette. Even with Nick Foles under center, Fournette's averaged 9.5 targets and 24 touches per game in his last 2 contests. Number 9, Le'Veon Bell. It's simple. The Bengals have allowed the 3rd most rushing yards and 6th most fantasy points per game to opposing running backs and don't present a threat to Bell's 20-plus touches. Number 8, Josh Jacobs. Oakland should look to lean on Jacobs often since Kansas City's charged with Football Outsiders' number 31 rush defense DVOA and over 5 yards per attempt to enemy backfields. Number 7, Saquon Barkley. Although he struggled with 2.7 yards per carry since returning from his high ankle sprain in Week 7, Barkley's 6.2 targets per game in that span keep him as a viable top 10 play in PPR leagues weekly. Number 6, Nick Chubb. Even with Kareem Hunt back for the Browns the last 3 games, Chubb's averaged 22.7 carries and 3 targets in that span. Number 5, Ezekiel Elliott. Even with Tony Pollard involved on 8 targets and 6 carries the past 2 weeks, Zeke's averaged 21.5 touches in that stretch. Number 4, Derrick Henry. Averaging 21 carries, 174 yards, and 2 touchdowns in Tennessee's last 2 games alone, Henry has become matchup-proof through the month of December, even in a tougher bout against the Colts. Number 3, Dalvin Cook. Cook's 11 carries against Denver was his floor. Friendly reminder, he averaged 23.8 carries and 5.5 targets in the 4 games prior to that dud. Number 2, Alvin Kamara. Latavius Murray's been involved of late, but Kamara's 24 carries and 9.5 targets the past 2 weeks firmly entrench him as a top 2 overall play against Atlanta's defense on Thanksgiving night. And number 1, Christian McCaffrey. New Orleans' defense, on the road nonetheless, was arguably McCaffrey's toughest test to date, and he still came away with 34 fantasy points in PPR leagues. Fire him up as the number 1 overall play in Week 13.
I'm Josh Norris. Here are your top 5 quarterback plays for Week 13. Let's start off with Aaron Rodgers against the New York Jets. We know Rodgers is coming off a brutal performance against San Francisco, has just 2 touchdowns in his last 3 games, but we can narrow down those bad performances is when they're facing good defenses and numerous pass rushers. Well, the Giants have no pass rushers and they don't have a good defense. So Aaron Rodgers should come up big this week at New York. Russell Wilson against the Minnesota Vikings at number 4. It's not like Russ is on this wild hot streak as of late, just 2 touchdowns in his last 2 games. But the Vikings corners are absolutely brutal this year. They absolutely stink. And they've morphed into a pass funnel defense. So while Chris Carson or Rashad Penny might get stuffed up the middle, Russell Wilson should complete a lot of passes to his outside receivers. Drew Brees against the Atlanta Falcons is at number 3. We know Brees is coming off a 3-touchdown performance against the Carolina Panthers, and maybe more importantly than anything, he completed 6 passes of 15-plus yards down the field. He's a downfield passer, at least as of late. And the last time these 2 teams played, we know Brees was sacked 6 times. I doubt that happens again. This Falcons defense had their moment in the spotlight, and Drew Brees should carve them up on Thanksgiving. Lamar Jackson against the San Francisco 49ers is at number 2. We all watched Lamar have 5 passing touchdowns against the LA Rams on Monday Night Football, but he also added 98 rushing yards. That's 13 touchdowns now in 3 games. It was an unreal performance. Just completely overwhelms teams early. The Ravens offense does. We know the 49ers are beasts up front. They can rush the passer very well. They have a great rotation, but really nothing can prepare you for how good this Ravens offense is. Plus, the Ravens are at home. Don't overthink it. Start Lamar with confidence. We close out number 1 with Patrick Mahomes against the Oakland Raiders. The Chiefs are coming off a bye week and now get one of the worst defenses in the NFL. The Raiders had their pass rush moment, and their secondary has just been torched all season long. So trust Mahomes with or without Tyreek Hill this week. Moving on to tight ends, and let's start with Hunter Henry at number 5 against the Denver Broncos. Henry, since coming back from injury, is a key fixture in this Chargers offense. 26 targets over his last 3 games. We know Denver's defense is good, but really that's volume at the tight end position, which is scarce, that we can't overlook. Number 4, Jared Cook against the Atlanta Falcons. Jared Cook really is channeling the New Orleans version of Jimmy Graham, hauling in red zone targets, hauling in contested catches. He has 4 touchdowns in his last 5 games, proven to be a trustable target for Drew Brees, and the Falcons' moment of good defense is absolutely over. Number 3 is George Kittle against the Baltimore Ravens. We saw Kittle return to the field in a big way with 129 yards and a touchdown. I am hedging a bit here because the Ravens' defense, and especially their secondary, is fantastic, but you still are going to start Kittle because he really is the key cog of that 49ers passing game. Number 2, Zach Ertz against the Miami Dolphins. We know the Eagles' offense is broken. Really, the only thing that is working is Carson Wentz to Zach Ertz, and he was targeted 14 times last week for 12 receptions. Volume is king, especially at tight end, and Ertz is getting it despite how bad the Eagles are offensively. And number 1 is Travis Kelce against the Oakland Raiders. Chiefs are coming off a bye. At least 7 catches for Kelce and 75 yards and a touchdown in each of his last 2 games. Touchdown regression in a positive way really hit him this season. And yes, the Raiders defense is absolutely brutal, one of the worst in the NFL.